With me now in the studio is the Shadow Health Minister Mark Butler. Thanks very much for your time. I know you and the opposition have been critical of the pace of the vaccine rollout, but fundamentally, aren't we dealing with a problem that we're almost victims of our success? That people are hesitant, maybe complacent, because we haven't had much COVID in the community.
Well, that's right. There is a certain irony to that, and other countries that did as well as Australia, many of them in our own region, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea and others, are also experiencing higher levels of vaccine hesitancy than naturally you would expect in places where there's an emergency, like the UK and the US. So we've said for some time now that the government should be taking that on head on with a strong public health information campaign, strong advertising, to just reinforce the message that a community-wide vaccination strategy is the pathway to freedom, to use the New Zealand advertising slogan, the pathway to freedom. Without vaccinations, we're going to continue to see these lockdowns like we're seeing in Victoria. We saw a few weeks ago in Perth. We've seen 17 outbreaks from hotel quarantine in just 6 months, one every week or two. To really be free of this thing, we need to be vaccinated.
It's not often you get an opposition saying to a government, spend more dollars, taxpayer dollars, on ads. But in this case, you don't think there should be a limit or penny pinching when it comes to this issue?
Right. I mean, this government's not been shy of using government funds for advertising. Since their election in 2013, about $1 billion in taxpayer-funded advertising. Some of it good, some of it indifferent, some of it we'd argue with. For the first time, we've got the opposition saying spend more on taxpayer-funded advertising. There is a strong national interest in doing this. We're not saying what particular ads to use. We've got a great tradition of public health information campaigns here. Use those experts, but also look at what's working around the world. Dolly Parton's doing it in the US. Elton and Michael Caine are playing a role in the UK. As I said, the New Zealanders is more grassroots. It's very much a positive campaign, the pathway to freedom. I'm not fussed really what the message ends up being. That's not my thing.
But you want to see it everywhere.
I want to see it happening.
And
we're not seeing anything
blanket
right now.
coverage of it.
Absolutely.
Because at the moment there is this hesitancy which could be so damaging to the final stages of our dealing with COVID. Because, you know, in that footy analogy, we've done well in the first 3 quarters. We don't want to stuff it up in the final quarter.
That's right.
By not getting this vaccination rollout. So in terms of the advertising, what else can be done?
Well, I mean, there's also a question of incentives. So other countries are putting in place incentives for people to get vaccinated, lotteries. You know, I've seen pictures of young people having a beer while they're getting vaccinated in Israel. Again, I don't have a fixed view about what that should be. But our
job. Do you think a lottery would work?
Well, again, I don't have a fixed view. That's not my thing. There are experts and behavioural economists and behavioural psychologists who should be brought into this. What I do know is the current pace, 4 months into the rollout, we're only running at 500,000 per week. That is simply nowhere near fast enough. At that rate, we won't be vaccinated until deep into the second half of 2022. That's not quick enough.
But that lottery idea, in Ohio, they're doing that. 5 people win, I think it was $1 million each. That's not a bad incentive to go and get a jab, particularly someone that's going to save your life.
It's pretty good, isn't it? So I'm not saying that should be it. I'm not saying it should be beers. But we've got to start getting stuff, options onto the table, because we're just not doing it quick enough. There's no longer a supply problem. The Prime Minister used to say this was a supply constraint. The government is getting 1.4 million doses given to them by Pfizer and by CSL every week, but we're only putting 500,000 into people's arms. There's a 900,000 surplus there every single week. So it's not a supply problem, it's a distribution problem, and there is growing vaccine hesitancy. We're seeing it in the research, and I think everyone I talk to is seeing it anecdotally.
The aged care response, I know that Josh Burns and Labor today talking about a couple of aged care centres, but if you look at the numbers, I've got the latest numbers here. There are 598 residential aged care facilities in Victoria. 582 have seen their first dose. That's 97%. Nationwide, first dose, 97%. Second dose, 71% complete. It is a huge task that they're facing, and you have picked a couple of facilities. The government says those facilities that haven't had their first dose will be done in the next 48 hours. That's a quick response, isn't it?
No, this didn't pop up today or over the last 24 hours. almost on a daily basis for weeks and weeks now, I've been drawing attention to the poor rate of vaccination in aged care and in disability care as well. So 40% of aged care residents in Victoria still are not fully vaccinated. Now, I know the Prime Minister talks a lot about first dose and even describes that as people being vaccinated. I think that is misleading. This is a 2-dose vaccine. To be fully protected, the government's own
But
health
you still get
website.
70% protection with the first jab,
Yes,
so it's
you
not
get some
insignificant.
protection. It's not insignificant, but it's not vaccinated. We need full vaccination of the most vulnerable members of our community. Now, the Prime Minister promised this would happen by Easter. OK, we'd tolerate some slippage, but we are several weeks now beyond Easter, and still we have 40% of Victorians' facilities not fully vaccinated. The Disabilities Royal Commission heard last week that 99% of residents in disability residential facilities are not fully vaccinated, something that counsel assisting that Royal Commission described last week as an abject failure. This is a group also incredibly vulnerable, often immunocompromised. So they've just got to do better on this. This is a Commonwealth job. They should be amping up the use of in-reach teams to go in there and do this as a matter of urgency.
You have also been critical of the lack of a standalone quarantine facility outside of the hotels, like the Howard Springs option. Would Labor, have you said you would build one in government?
No, we've said there should be a network. Not just one, not just two. There should be a network around the country.
You would build several.
This thing's not going away anytime soon. Howard Springs is the only Commonwealth facility. It's only got 850 places. It was supposed to expand to 2,000 in April, May, the Prime Minister said.
So in office you would build a number?
Well, depends what time we're in office and what the government has done in the interim. What we're saying is right now there should be a focused effort by the Commonwealth to build a network of these to take the pressure off hotels. Hotels were built for tourists. They weren't built for medical quarantine. We continue to see these outbreaks from hotels, usually because of poor ventilation, because the virus travels outside of the room of an infected person, into the corridor and into the room of an uninfected person. I don't know how many more times this has to happen before the Prime Minister, who is responsible for quarantine, does what so many experts have advised him to do and put this network in place.
Well, whether you win the next election or not, we hope, if you did, that this COVID period, at least that everyone would be vaccinated, would have herd immunity by then. But sadly, this is not... A lot of experts think that we will see another pandemic in our lifetime. Would it be worth building that sort of network regardless?
That's right. Well, the Commonwealth has had a network of quarantine facilities going back for more than 100 years. It's always been recognised as a Commonwealth responsibility. I don't remember a politician in recent memory who has made more of the Commonwealth's role in securing our borders than the former Immigration Minister Scott Morrison, but he seems to be washing his hands of this one. He's got to step up. There's got to be a network. The Victorian government has a proposal. I don't understand why he rejected the Toowoomba proposal in Queensland. He should be proactively seeking these out.
Mark Butler, thanks.
Thanks, Kieran.